Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Post some weird childhood experiences, stories that you still can explain. Fuck, I meant can't explain. This is a weird one that bothers me to this day. My family bought a townhouse in the early 2000s, late 90s. Always saw shadow people in the house. The energy in the basement was very bad and the laundry boiler room awful. I hated going downstairs, but it was the only place to escape from my crazy abusive family situation. I slept in a bedroom with my sister, bunk beds. One night I went to bed like normal, woke up very early, must have been 2 to 5 a.m., on the floor of my basement in my pajamas in a cross pose like Jesus on the crucifix. I got up terrified, put the light on, ran to bed and tried to sleep. Never thought about it again until almost a decade later when family dinner the townhouse came up. I tell my story laughing it off like that was weird, right? My older sister just looks at me and says, "Oh my God, the same thing happened to me, I swear." I could tell she wasn't lying. Definitely made me a bit uneasy. Story 2. Moved after about 4 years into another home about 35 minutes away. That day I'm with my dad walking to the storage unit where a bunch of boxes full of random its are stacked on top of each other. As he's putting down a box on the floor, one from the top of the stack furiously starts making noise. It was clearly a Herby toy that used to be popular back then. My dad picks it up to try to put it off, but he says there's no batteries in it. What's going on? We quietly just stand there watching this Herby going off with no batteries for about another 10 seconds, then it stops. A very strange feeling fills the room and I don't know why, but I looked up at him and said, "I think your dad died." Why I did this, I really don't know. He wasn't mad like you would expect, but almost was like he was agreeing with me. He called his family to check and they confirmed he just passed.
When I was a kid, I don't remember when it happened, but at least I was younger than 7. In the home where I grew up, we had a section of it that in the past used to be another small house. That was rented, but we turned them into a warehouse once my mom got the deed to the property, and the only way to get in there is through a door outside. At that time I remember there was an old closet between the old trash, junk and old clothes, and my family opened the place to try organize the whole thing. Me with curiosity, I got inside by myself and went to the bottom of the room where the closet was. I was just looking around, and after I opened the closet door, I saw another room inside it. It was completely dark beside of a dim light from an old wood box TV, a large single-seat sofa with a fat woman watching the same TV, and then a kid came to me and asked me if I wanted to play with him. Both him and his mom were wearing all white clothing. So, I said I had to ask my parents to do that, so ran to them and told them to come with me about some randoms in the warehouse. Then, we came to the closet. It was normal. Just nothing beside the wall that separates the warehouse and both bathrooms from the part of the house where I used to live. After that it never happened again. No matter how many times I got inside to the warehouse again. And in the end the closet was dumped a long time ago, but the memory of it's still creeping me out even after so many years ago when it happened. Another one got happened in New Year Eve of 2018 to 2019, and that year my family chose to not do a big party with everyone, just my grandparents, mom, me and my sister, but everyone went to sleep early, so I was the only one who stayed until 12 a.m. I remember that after chatting with my friends about the new year, I was looking videos on my cell phone, and the only light in the living room was the TV and my cell phone. After some time I had the feeling that someone is watching me. So, I looked to the room and immediately I saw something gray and small, almost like just a head, and by small it was really small, like dog size, looking me form behind a wall, and it hide back as soon as it noticed me. I walked to where it was and nothing. I said fuck this and ran to bed.
I apparently had a recurring nightmare that involved my big sister, and my family would hear me screaming, "Sarah, no. No, Sarah, no, 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 Sarah, no." They said it sounded more like I was terrified of her instead of sounding like something bad happened to her. I couldn't tell you why, because no matter how many times I'd be asked about it, I could never remember the dream. Never had trouble remembering other dreams, and this went on until I was 16 and she moved on to college. The recurring dream I do remember is that people would be in my room. I'd get the impression that they were an authority figure like a gym teacher or band director, and I would stand up out of bed for a while like I had been caught sleeping when I wasn't supposed to. This would last for a few minutes and I'd crawl back into bed. Wasn't shadowing people, was never afraid of them, just felt like they were annoyed with me. Later started chalking it up as a strange byproduct of exhaustion, since it would pretty routinely happen after 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. marching band practice. What felt like the whole band would be packed into my room and waiting for me to get back up.
Be me, like 9 to 10 years old, finally old enough to be home alone. Be at my grandparents' house all alone, only for like 20 minutes, my granddad was just driving my grandmom somewhere. Be sitting on the toilet taking a shit or whatever. Hear the front door slam. Shit a brick. Too scared to do anything, begin contemplating what type of creature is coming to kill me. Shout the dog's name a few times to see if he will come save me. Somehow convince myself it was an alien, and if I just find the dog and stay with him I'll be safe. Grow balls and finally leave the bathroom. Can't find the fucking dog, oh my lord. Run back to the bathroom and sit back on the toilet. I'll just sit here and wait for granddad to come home. Once he got back, the dog was in the living room and I was too embarrassed to tell him what happened. The front door was very loud when opening and closing. I was sure I would have heard it if he was just coming back for his keys or something, but he had been gone for a bit, and all I heard was the door slam shut. I was super scared of aliens my entire childhood. My dad showed me a lot of alien movies like Close Encounters and shit, even E.T. scared the shit out of me until I was like 12. Legit had nightmares that little dried up raisin looking fuck E.T. was running around my bedroom or some shit.
1984, 8 or 9 years old. Go to old priory open to the public with dad. No roof on the main chapel. Really fat old woman dressed in a shawl sitting in the back pew. Boiling hot day. Dad goes to ask if she's okay. Nothing. Never acknowledged him. Walk back in. She's gone. Son, I think we've just seen a ghost. Years later. Go back with dad in 2015. Talk to woman curator. Tell her we were here in 1984 when the roof was off. She tells us that's impossible. It was last repaired in 1874. We didn't see a ghost. We went through a time slip.
Once, like 10 years ago or something like that, I had some friends over and we were chilling playing some Halo all night, the good old days. Sometime late at night, I don't remember the time specifically, but it was late ASF. My sister, who was like 8 at the time, started screaming TF out of her mind, hysterically yelling about someone being in her closet. Now, it's not the first time she did. She actually did this very commonly. It scared the fuck out of me every time. She would wake up at the random times throughout the nights being fucking hysterical about someone being in the closet, watching her. This wasn't uncommon for her. She did this shit all the time, and every time it never failed to terrify me. Her terror seemed genuine, like she was actually seeing demons. Being woke up at 3 a.m. to my sister pointing at the closet with owl eyes screaming about him being in there and watching. I was always too scared to even check. This time though was even scarier. It's been a bit since she's done it and now my friends were being scared by it too. I went in there to check on her, calm her down, and send her back to sleep, but she was too scared to sleep, so I brought her back to calm down with my friends until she could. After I came back in the room with my friends, somehow the door fucking slammed shut behind me. That scared everyone shitless. We have no idea how, why, or what caused it, but it's undeniable. All of us saw it. For our sister's sake, we explained it away as the open window letting wind in that closed it, but that shit fucking slammed. Needless to say, none of us got any sleep that night. Even my Reddit tier atheist skeptic bro has zero explanation for it, still creeps the shit out of me today. Aside from that, my only other experience was a banana inexplicably rolling itself off the table, but that's not shit compared to the door in my opinion.
Apparently when I was a kid, I used to talk to an old lady who used to live at our house. I know a lot of kids apparently do this. An old lady actually died there before we moved in. I used to take 2 biscuits up to bed, one for me, one for her. I never ate the second. I can't remember any of this, Dad told me about it. I currently sleep in a bed which an old lady died in. I know it sounds fucked up, but I'm not the spiritual type and the bed was free from an old care home. Plus, it's awesome. The bed has a motor underneath which lifts the bottom and top half up, great for watching TV. I had some drinks last night and was unconsciously aware of a need for water. I half woke up, still in a dreamy cloudy daze. It was pitch black, but I could see there was a short thin figure in the bed. It was devoid of color, harder than the night around it. I guess I had sleep paralysis or something because I couldn't move, and while I acknowledged this thing's presence, I had that old childlike attitude towards it. I tried to play with it, but alas, my body wasn't moving. It didn't spook me then, but it's been troubling me more. It was so cold, yet my window was closed. Feels a bit creepy now. I might sleep on the sofa tonight.
Be 9 to 13 years old. The hallway of my parents' country-style house is the main area of the house between my room, the bathroom, the kitchen, the living room, and my parents' and sister's bedrooms. Every night after 1:30 a.m. I would hear something running down the hallway, from my parents' and sister's bedrooms, to the other side of the house, my room, the kitchen, and our living room. Running sounds stop every time right at my bedroom. This happens repeatedly every 5 to 10 minutes and would play on repeat, running from my parents' room to my room. Running, shuffling sound would continue until 5 a.m. every day. Get used to it because shit like creaking and stuff randomly falling off shelves is sorta normal. One day at around 3:30 a.m., during the summer. Up late watching Adult Swim and snacking. The running stops at my door like usual until suddenly I hear a loud bang on my door. Bedroom door vibrates and slowly swings open. No one on the other side of the door as it creeps open. Everyone else is sound asleep. WTF.jpg. Walk to my door. Hallway feels ice cold. Hair stands up on the back of my neck. Get very unnerved and feel like I have to get the fuck away from the door. Shut door and lock it. Run away. Gif back to my bed and go to sleep. Once I turned 14, I stopped hearing the running sounds but continued to hear random scratching, wooden creaking, and see the occasional object slide off of the middle tables until I moved out. I also forgot to add that every dog my family has ever owned would sit down and stare intently at an exact single corner of the hallway ceiling by the kitchen frequently too, especially if no one else but me was home. These dogs were years apart from each other too, so they never learned to do this from each other either. I also once saw a shadow version of my sister staring directly into my parents' faces as they were sleeping when I was going to the bathroom when I was 4. Scared the shit out of me, but something in the back of my head told me to keep calm and just go back to bed or else I would provoke whatever that thing was.
This is one of my oldest memories. I have told this to some people throughout my life and I always get ignored by the nature of it, and I know there will be an exception, so here it goes. Be me 4 years old or something. Family of 3, before my brothers were born. Dad promised a trip to the beach. Next Sunday we take off. He takes us almost outside the city. Said he knew a shortcut. At some point he turns off the highway into a dirt road that hasn't been used in a long time. We passed through a rusty fence. I don't remember what it said, as I didn't know how to read. As we went on, it appeared it was a one-way road, so to return you'd have to turn from the same way. The path was filled with bushes, small trees, as if only the road was clear for cars to pass by. At some point we encountered a wall, about 3 meters high to our left. Some more minutes driving along the wall. A huge shadow is cast upon us. An enormous thing in the shape of a semicircle on the other side of the wall. However, nobody said anything and we continued to the beach. When we got there, that part of it was desolated, probably because of the amount of red seaweed on the sand. Not related, but I remember that Petty Well was playing to build sand castle with it. We couldn't get into the water, and after less than an hour we came back, although we didn't use the same road. Later sometime. Be me 7 years old. We had already moved out of that other city. Watching TV with my mom. One of those morning shows for nothing better to do woman. The paranormal section of the show. The UFO that crashed on City Name in the 90s. Holy shit. GIF. After that I tell my mom that anecdote when we went to the beach. She didn't recall seeing that semicircle shape nor the wall. Throughout the years I have tell the same story, and both my mom and dad seem to forget more and more about that trip, getting older, and that trip wasn't anything special for them as adults, but for me as toddler it was one of my earliest memories.
I have never posted this story before, but this thread got me in a mood. My family has owned this vacation house on the Oregon coast since the 1960s. Naturally a dreary place, the neighborhood was heavily wooded and only about a half-mile inland from the water. There are a few houses dotted around the woods. One has always stuck out. It has been abandoned and boarded up my entire life. It always had an ominous vibe. Even the adults didn't like hanging out near the place. There were even a couple weather-worn wooden headstones on the property, which I always thought was odd. My friends and I used to like to try and freak each other out by making dares on who would get closest to the house. I even remember seeing figures in the second-story windows at some points in my life. Always an unsettling place. One day, my friend John and I are bored at the coast. We are probably about 8 years old and we decided to go spook ourselves at the house. We walk down the gravel road to the house, but something is different this time. The unsettling aura is completely gone. I even remember the weather clearing up and the area being covered in a warm misty moss. Shortly after we arrive, a girl wearing a blue dress walks out from behind the house. She was our age and she claimed that she and her family lived in the house. My friend and I were confused because this place had been boarded up for as long as we could remember, but she seemed not to hear us. She asked us to join her for a tea party in her treehouse. We were surprised, as we had never noticed a treehouse on the property before. But we joined her and hung out for what seemed like a few hours. It was getting late and we needed to eat. We invited her to join us for food, but she said her parents didn't want her to leave the property. We asked her if she could ask her parents about it, but she dismissed the idea. We left, had dinner, and told our parents about what happened. I remember my mom was disturbed the story. Sure enough, the next day we returned to the house and it had returned to its ominous state. We looked for evidence of our new friend, but there was no trace. The only clue that was left to us was the treehouse she had taken us to in the backyard. It was still there, but it was completely overgrown with lichen, entirely dilapidated and falling apart from years of near constant rainfall and salt air. We tried to climb up to the treehouse, but it was too far gone and unsafe. My friend and I both remembered the story vividly, but we had a big falling out in middle school and we haven't spoken since then, so I have no idea what he thinks about it. Looking back, it feels like a totally benign experience. I'm not sure if it was a ghost or an incident of isolated time travel. It has always felt like one of the most true paranormal events of my life. I'm curious to know if anyone else has had similar experiences. Sounds like the open roof church anon in this thread is the closest I have seen so far.
I vividly remember being in preschool and not wanting to go to sleep during nap time, so my 2 female teachers let me stay up one day. While every other kid was still asleep, though, one of my teachers came up to me and asked if I wanted to see their dog. They called it something along the lines of Herby, I think. I thought it was a weird question and said, "The schoolhouse is too small, there's not a dog here." To which she responded, "Oh no, Herby's in the back room over there. Come on, let's see him." I remember her being really insistent about it, but I liked dogs, so what the hell, you know. So I let her lead me into the back room. And this is where my memory starts to go hazy, but I remember, instead of coming in with me, she closed the door after I entered. It was like some kind of boiler room. Dark with dim orange lighting, and I remember backing up into a wall because there really was a dog inside. It was a huge rabid-looking thing with a black coat and it was chained up to something, and it started barking and lunging at me, but the chain kept it back. Every now and then, when it got tired and sat down, I would rush toward the door and slam open it, jiggle the knob, which was locked, and generally shit my pants, crying the entire time. And then, finally, they let me the fuck out. I had been in there so long the rest of the kids were up and it was nearly time to go home. But I remember the 2 teachers looking at me all concerned and asking me what was wrong. I pointed at the door and cried out, "The dog." The one who locked me in there in the first place said, "You mean Herby?" She then proceeded to open the door and pulled out a giant orange dog plushie I had never seen before. The rabid dog I had seen before was nowhere in sight. To this day, I still have no fucking idea what happened there, but I never told anyone and convinced myself I made it up.
When I was a kid, my dad had a game he'd play with my brother and me. When it was about to ring, if you could feel it, you would shout "phone." After doing that for probably a decade, I could feel it too. Not as well as Dad could, but enough to keep up. I realized in college the same weird butterfly feeling you get when the phone was going to ring you could feel in other situations, and I started using it whenever possible. Eventually ideas start leaking in. I chalked it up to maybe dead ancestors, guardian angels, whatever I believed in that week, but once you opened that floodgate, a trickle turned into a rush, and that feeling has always been right no matter what weirdness it said. An example is earlier this month, my buddy was asking for first date advice with a girl. I was going to tell him to get coffee somewhere near, no pressure, be breezy, etc. when that feeling big time ramped up and I just relaxed. Deleted the paragraphs I wrote and went into neutral and typed what car to use, what type of nice restaurant, order her meal for her, call ahead and get the correct wine pairing for it, and then try to bounce a bit early with an excuse you have to leave but want to set up a second date, and not only you'll get it but probably a call at 2 a.m. too. Never met the girl, only saw her pic, but that feeling was a 5-alarm fire and that's what it wanted to say. So naturally my buddy says I sound like a psychopath and offers mini golf. She blows up on him and said her idea of a man is someone who takes charge, and pretty much types what I said almost verbatim on what her other dates have done and ghosts. Me personally, I'd have done something low pressure as well. That's why I think it's more than schizo shit. This feeling knows how the world works and how to make it work for you regardless of if you agree with it.
I had 2 time skips around the age of 4 to 5. The first, me and my little brother are going to bed on Friday night.
We'd told our mother to wake us up early to watch Saturday morning cartoons, Justice League and whatnot. I can't fall asleep. I'm too excited about the next day. I get up to tell my mom that I can't fall asleep. My lil bro is also awake and gets up after me. I find my mom wide awake and my dad off to work. She tells us we're a little early and that we can go back to sleep or see what's on television. It was cloudy all day, so only now did I notice that the sun was up. Super weirded out. Didn't feel like sleeping at all, so we sat on the floor and watched TV, and the cartoon program was just beginning with Woody Woodpecker. I know the simplest explanation is that I just fell asleep and didn't notice, but as a kid I was 100% convinced that that wasn't the case. My explanation back then was that we went to bed really late, woke up really early, and I didn't feel the time pass. I didn't feel like I'd fallen asleep at all. The second. Be me. 4 years old. Me and my family are going to the seaside for the first time in my life and going to visit my aunt and uncle, so of course I'm excited. My dad is driving the 4 of us in the car. We're going along the driveway. Take a turn to the right on the main road. Shortly after, take a second right turn on a street that doesn't exist, or there's now some garages and a playground. Mid-turn, the whole surrounding changes. From the city we're now suddenly on a suburban street surrounded by lush trees, which leads straight to my aunt and uncle's house. I remember the exact moment everything changed and have no memories of the 400 kilometers trip between my home city and my uncle's town. Because of this memory, kid me was convinced we lived very close to the sea, and when I learned about the true distance I convinced myself the whole trip must have been a dream. But it wasn't. My mom and dad confirmed that we did go to the seaside and I was 4, and other details I remember such as my cousin's pets and going to the beach with my aunt also lined up with what my mom told me.
About 14 years, so 1996. At a friend's house. My 2 friends go to the store, they walked there and I just stayed at my friend's house alone. They come back. Later I learned that they intended to just fuck with me. However, friends come back saying something like, "Bro, there's a sewer lid off down the street and we heard a girl down there calling for help. Let's go check it out." Later learned they were lying and wanted to push me into the sewer. Anyway, cut to we have some steak knives and we go up to the sewer. They were acting scared and were directly behind me. Going up to the sewer, call down there, I say, "Is there anyone down there?" At this point their hands were on my back about to try to push me in. They start laughing when all of a sudden we hear what sounded like a loud bear growling from 20 feet down. There wasn't any room for a bear or a human down there. We take off running. Never ran so fast. Ran away so fast only the tips of my toes were touching the ground. We get back and they tell me about their plan to push me in or try to. They had no idea what the crazy loud growl was. Story 2. At a friend's house with my friend. Again, I'm 15 or 16 at the time. The guy whose apartment me and my buddy are about to leave. I ask him for a flashlight before we leave. It was weird that I asked, but we had to walk through the woods to get back to my house. He gives me a flashlight. Me and my buddy leave the apartment. Get to the fence and hop over into the woods. Get halfway through the woods when we hear something to the left of us. I'm carrying the flashlight. I turn to look at the noise and see the cattails moving. My friend takes off running. I yell at him, "Where the fuck are you going, pussy?" I'm like, "Whatever." Turn back to the noise with my flashlight. I don't see shit but see the cattails moving. Aim the light to the ground more. I see human, barefoot footprints sinking down into the mud coming towards me. I even waited a second for a fresh one to form to verify they weren't already there. It happens again. Then I take off running. We were so freaked out we didn't even talk about it other than like, "Whoa bro, that was fucked." Years later I asked him about it. I was like, "Hey Ryan, why did you take off running that night?" He said he had seen a shadowy figure coming towards us. I tell him about the footprints. But I didn't see anything else. So he saw the ghost and I saw footprints sinking down in the mud. I have other stories too. Just have to think about it. Another story continues from my mud footprint story. Me and another friend are on a hunting trip up north in Michigan. Dead asleep. I'm on the floor sleeping and my friend is sleeping on the couch that I am in front of. I wake up about 3 or 4 a.m. to an old rocking chair in front of me rocking on its own. There's no way my friend did it. He was dead asleep, plus he would have had to step on me to get to it. Plus I'm a very light sleeper. Plus he was a small guy and I'm bigger. I woke him up and showed him the chair rocking. It squeaked too as it rocked. It stopped after 10 seconds of us looking at it. This was a trailer in the middle of nowhere in the woods. His family's hunting cabin was on 230 acres. The next night I was woken by something banging loudly on the floor directly underneath me. I woke him up again and he heard it too. Here's the kicker. The reason I was sleeping right in front of him on the couch was because the only bedroom in the trailer had a bed in it. His grandpa died in it 20 years prior. He told me on our drive up the place was haunted. I didn't believe him.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.